Good. Just want to make sure I'm recording. Everybody muted. That's good. And now we can start. So, very, very good morning to all of you. And welcome to this. Now, this is our fourth session about consciousness and primordial wisdom. So let's start. Excellently. And yesterday I spent a few more minutes than the other days explaining that we need I hope you remember three things. A big mind, which means inclusive. We include as many beings as we can, as we've read about, as we know about, but most especially we include those ones who have figured in our life, important people, parents, siblings, children, friends, enemies, and so on. A big mind. And then secondly, a loving mind, whereby our attitude we try to make just now as we motivate ourselves, and through the talk as we feel we're here for everybody. And this becomes so important in the context of today's talk. We see the whole process of changing consciousness into wisdom is about getting out of ego's limitations and going into the limitless truth of our mind. And so we try to feel the greatest love we've ever felt for anybody, purest love, and to feel that without any restraint towards everybody, even the worst people we can think of, the ones who've hurt you, and the ones who are right now hurting this world, everybody. Our job on this Buddhist path, for our own benefit and for everybody's benefit, is to love everybody with great kindness. And there's a very, very, very powerful image for this in the scriptures, which is that of a mother with an only child that she loves very dearly. And the only child is not well. The only child is in fact in a deep fever, and so doesn't recognize and is actually hitting out at the mother. So the mother is getting beaten. But of course, she doesn't give up on the child because of that. The love for the child, because the child's in such a state, is even greater. So our love for everybody, even the ones we think of as the most evil people in this world, or evil spirits, evil demons, we love them. So a big mind and a loving mind, and then a happy mind, because we have this treasure of Dharma. Dharma is forever. It will be your companion all the way through your journey of consciousness, life after life. Whether you're human, hedgehog, deva, naga, whatever you'll be in all those lives that are waiting for you, Dharma will be your better and better friend. Dharma's forever. When you come to the end of consciousness and you're liberated, then that is Dhamma Kaya. Dhamma Dhatu, pure Dharma, nothing but Dharma, truth. Dharma's forever. Everything else, everyone else comes and goes. So no matter how intensively you are involved with people, with places, with this body that you inhabit just now, it will go. But Dharma is forever. So we are enriching our Dharma. It's trickling in. It's like a slow petrol pump. And Dharma's going in like that. And gradually it's becoming this good friend. So thinking we're here, for everyone, we turn our hearts in loving care to each and every being, and think we are learning about this topic for all of them. Thank you. Sonje chodon soji chonom la jancho badu dane chapsunji. Dagi jinso jipe sonomji. Rola penchira sonje drupara sho. Semchen tamche dewa dang dewe jodang dempara chochi. Dukngal ji jodang shalwara chochi. Dungal mepe dewa tampa dang men shalwara chochi. Yerin chadan netang shalwe. Tanyom chempola nepara chorachi. Palen sawe lama rinpoche. Dagye chewara pende denshola. Kadrin chempo gone jizonte. Kuson tuje ngadrup saldo sol. So yesterday was, in some ways, a lot of it was revising how far we got until now, these 8 consciousnesses. And so assuming that you have some kind of idea of what they are now, today we're looking at how these consciousnesses, in terms of relative language, transform into the Buddhakayas and the Buddha wisdoms. But in fact, as we saw yesterday, nothing transforms. It's that they fade away. And it's only when they fade away that the truth of our mind can become apparent. So we work on our mind and we remove those 8 consciousnesses. Now let's stay just for a moment with those 8. We've seen what they are. The 8th consciousness, the storehouse. The 7th consciousness, which does 2 things, which pulls out the next moment from all of our personal reservoir of karma. So it pulls out the next moment and puts it on screen and then splits it into 2. That's 7th consciousness. That manifests as the 6 famous consciousnesses: seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and the mind. And there's a sequence. 7th consciousness puts on screen. The moment is on screen, the split second. 7th consciousness takes it away. 7th consciousness brings up the next moment. So it sequences. Now, although that's happening, we are not like some kind of random image generator that's gone berserk, where we're just this thing, that thing, this thing, that thing, that thing, that thing. There is some kind of relative logic to it. There are stories. And so when we come out of this second by second reality of the play of the 8 consciousnesses, then we see what is being brought up on screen and presented to one aspect of the 6th consciousness, which means it's just there. So remember, 6th consciousness is mind, and mind receives the inputs from seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. So just raw awareness of a sight, a sound, whatever it may be in your mind, or from within the mind itself, a memory. That's one aspect of 6th consciousness that is on screen. But another aspect, which in your diagram is called, or peripheral activities or mental events, mental formations, they're called samskaras, and we study 51 key samskaras. Then that is reacting to and processing, and in a way interacting with 7th consciousness to say what it would like on screen next. So for instance, if you look, if your attention is caught by a flower. No, don't have a flower. No. What have I got on my desk? A pen. Then that pen presents itself to your 6th consciousness. There's just the raw seeing. But then the peripheral activities say, oh, pen, but, oh, wait a moment. This is not an ordinary pen. This is a pen for writing on an iPad and drawing pictures. It tells us what it is. So it describes, it puts a name, it puts a concept, and then it might say things like, oh, that's the best pen I ever bought. Oh, and it's really nicely designed and blah, blah. And then after about 3 seconds, your mind thinks, yeah, that's enough of that pen. I want a cup of coffee. So the mind will actually, sixth consciousness mind, peripheral activities, which are thinking, will then nudge seventh consciousness and say, oi, seventh consciousness. And the joker, seventh consciousness, says, what? I want coffee out your box now. And so then the mind turns to, yes, I should pick up my coffee and have a sip before it gets cold. And then it thinks, enough of coffee. What was I supposed to be doing? Oh, you're giving a Zoom talk. So sixth consciousness has 2 aspects. One, raw aspect, which is just aware. The mind is aware. It's more aware of a sound or a body feeling like hunger, hot and cold, or whatever it is, aware. And the other one is it entertains thinking and storytelling, the dualistic narrative. And then within that dualistic narrative, we have the possibility of virtuous thoughts or unvirtuous thoughts. The unvirtuous thoughts, which we describe mainly as the 5 poisons, will be the ones that give rise to unvirtuous or harmful actions, which cause us the painful karma. So as the unvirtuous peripheral mental activity of sixth consciousness works, then that causes us at times, not always, to use our body or our speech or our mind in a way which is damaging. Usually with the mind, we're damaging ourselves. With our body and speech, we are damaging others. The imprints of that go into the 8th consciousness. And depending on the power of the imprint, then they create the karma that will manifest in future lives. So 8th consciousness, when I first studied it with Khenpo Sotim Jamso in 1977, he said, this is marvelous. This is marvelous. Now, in those days, cassettes, audio cassettes were new. They were fairly new, and a lot of fun at the time. Because before, it was only things like the BBC and professional recorders who had big recording machines with huge tape reels that cost a lot of money. So when cassette recorders came along, it was a liberation for the people in its own way. And Khenpo Sotim said, this is just amazing example, because you have a blank cassette. Actually, you can't tell if it's blank or recorded until you put it in a machine and play it. But you put a blank one in the recorder, and then you go blah, 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 blah. Then you switch it off, and the imprint is in there. Now, if you took even a wonderful microscope and looked at the magnetic particles, if the imprint was, let's say, Om Mani Padme Hum, you'd only just see little particles on the tape. You wouldn't see or hear Om Mani Padme Hum. No one would know there's an Om Mani Padme Hum in there. Then if it went on your shelf and was discovered 25 years later, it's only when it's put into the machine and you press the play button that Om Mani Padme Hum from 25 years ago is heard. And you say, oh, that's the tape with the Om Mani Padme Hum in it. But in between, there is not a trace, not a trace. So 8th consciousness is imprinted by karma. And this is why the power of karma is so important. You see, one moment can imprint the mind incredibly powerfully. We see this within one life with trauma. When something may only take a couple of seconds, you see something horrible, you hear something horrible happens to you. But the power of that imprint is so strong that you might not be able to shake it off for years or for decades. There's one in the scriptures, we see the Buddha says, if somebody took just one flower and offered that up in sincere prayer, longing for enlightenment, it would be enough to obtain a precious human existence. Now, when we study a precious human existence and how rare it is, we know it's a very, very hard thing to get. So how could one moment with a flower? Well, unfortunately, you can't just go out into a meadow and think, okay, that's one human life, that's another human life. I've set myself up now 20 human lives just by plucking flowers and throwing them in the air. It means if in that moment, it's one of those moments when your whole heart is so given, your intention is so sincere, and you love everybody so much, you want to give everything you'll ever have to help them. In that kind of a moment, even though it's a few seconds, and even though it's just a flower, you can imprint your eighth consciousness enough for that to give you, because that's where it comes from, a precious human existence next time round. So the power of the imprinting is very strong. So those are a few more things I wanted to say about consciousness, this stream of consciousness with this very complex interplay of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 going on all the time. But when we zoom out, we see that we are, as we go through the days and the years, making karma and then reaping the results of the karma that we made, whether it's positive or negative. Either way, it's what we call stained karma because it's dualistic, stained by duality. So now we have that understanding. We go back to the original notion that the stream of consciousness and Buddha nature are running parallel. Buddha nature, or Buddha mind, pure mind, is always there, but it's covered up. So consciousness acts like layers and layers of covering over a lamp. Imagine an electric light bulb. I don't do this because it might catch fire, but you put one cloth on top of it and you still see light through the cloth, and then another layer of cloth and another one, and gradually the light gets dimmer and dimmer, and there'll come a point where the light cannot be seen anymore. It's still there. The bulb is still glowing beneath the cloths, but there are so many layers that now no one would know it was there. So like that, our consciousness, which in an earlier talk we saw has these 6 main modes, the 6 bardos: waking state, dream and sleep, profound human meditation, what happens just before we die, what happens as the mind leaves the body, clear light, and what happens between lives. So that non-stop, and normally never-ending stream of consciousness, every moment, and this is the 7th consciousness mainly, every moment is covering up your pure Buddha mind, like the light bulb. We wouldn't even know it was there. And so the Buddha nature teachings give us many examples of where it needs somebody from the outside, our gurus, our teachers, to come and tell you, now, Ken, you might not believe this. You're Buddha. You what? Me, Buddha? Nah, never. No, couldn't be. Look, I'm Ken. I'm, well, pretty mixed up, actually. No, you're Buddha. Come on. Pour the other one. Can't believe you. Prove it. Sorry, Ken, I can't quite prove it on the moment, but maybe if you meditate hard for the next 20 years, you'll see it's true. All right. Well, you look like a nice guy, and you look like you've got something going for yourself. And in fact, you're not really like most other humans I've met. And all right, I'll give it a try. So somebody comes along from the outside. And because the Dharma is convincing, the Guru's presence is convincing. And because from past lives, we have the capacity to open up our hearts and trust and create a bond, a sacred connection with the teacher, Samaya, then we can uncover the Buddha nature. So today, we're going to be returning to this idea of the path with its 5 main stages and its sub-stages to try and understand what happens in terms of the light first being seen and the light being seen more and more. And then because of that, how these 8 consciousnesses not just weaken, but drop away and drop away forever. So what will appear as the light of the mind is a one truth. Now, I won't go into philosophy, but I will mention one thing that is quite curious in philosophy. And we have this word advaita, which means not two, not two. In that case, it doesn't mean non-dual in philosophy. It means not two. Now, when we go back to the different ways of thinking in India, the way the Buddha thought, the way the Jains thought, the way various yoga schools thought, then a lot of them thought of not two. But quite what that meant varied. And sometimes not two, for some of them, meant one. But in Buddhist philosophy, definitely not two, but that doesn't mean one. Now, don't ask me to explain it. I could explain it, but it's just so you know the Buddhist position is we don't talk about the one, because if anyone ever asked us to define what the one is, we couldn't. So we become nonsense. We believe in the one, but we've got no idea what it is. We can't say what that one is. There are many reasons. See, other philosophies do. They have dogma. They have credos where they define the one. And we can't define our one, so we can't talk about a one, but we say definitely not two. It's a tricky position, but anyway, just so that you know that. But having said that, not a one thing, not a one thing that we can describe. Buddha, Buddha mind, nature of mind. And Karmapa's texts tell us over all the generations of Karmapas, no one can tell you what Buddha mind is. It's beyond any expression, any thought. But nevertheless, it is called, in very profound texts, for those of us on the inside, not those of us arguing with people on the outside from other traditions and religions, but on the inside, it's called Nyakchik in Tibet, the one and only. So although yesterday we explored the 3 kayas, how many fingers? 3. And then 4 if we add Svabhavika kaya as the essence. And today we go into the 5 wisdoms. They are not separate. The 5 Buddha families. It's not as though there's one family with its house over there, and then behind the hill there's another Buddha family, the Padma family. Although for us as humans, the Buddha gave teachings, Padmasambhava gave teachings, and our great masters gave teachings on the Buddha families in great detail. They are not separate. They are all part of our one truth, and they are the various ways it manifests. And in particular, when it comes to the Buddha families and the wisdoms, what we are looking at is how this formless Dharmakaya, Buddha for Buddha. Do you remember yesterday? Dharmakaya is Buddha as only Buddha mind, as only Buddhas will know it. It has no form. It is wisdom and love and power. None of those have form. None of those have limits. None of those have location here and not there. They permeate everything. Everything. They're all pervasive. No form. Nothing to see, nothing to hear. But that formless, undivided, that's why we say not to, undivided, without any internal separations, partitions. Buddha mind manifests as Sambhogakaya to very pure bodhisattvas, as pure lands, as Buddhas, as various Buddhas in groups, in families, with their various qualities. And what these qualities manifest, and mainly as the 5 families, is the transformation of our 5 mind poisons and the transformation of the 5 elements that make up existence. If we had time together. Now we'd, this, when you have meetings, they have what they call breakout groups. We'd have breakouts for a couple of days and we'd explore the 5 elements. It's a fascinating teaching. Maybe we can do a course on that next year. But the elements are much more important than they can seem at first when we study Dharma. They are called the prime cause of everything: earth, water, fire, wind, space. They come up in what seems like material reality, in our emotions, in our relationships with each other and with everybody, in our meditation practice. They come up on every level, and they are transformed into the 5 Buddha families. And then we'd have another breakout for a couple of days into the 5 main mind poisons: desire and attachment, hostility, ignorance, pride, jealousy. And we'd see how those 5 are transformed into the 5 Buddha families. So the Sambhogakaya is experienced by bodhisattvas, great bodhisattvas whose minds are free from samsaric rebirth. And it's from them, from those such as Manjushri, such as Maitreya, such as Chenrezig, such as Vajrapani, that we get the teachings on all of these Buddha families. So now today, let's try and understand them, and let's have a look, and I've not really done that very much in the last talk, at the text. So now we need to refer in the paper, either now or after this talk is over, to this basic transformation chart. And then we're going back to the text, and we're going to pick it up at verse 22. Verse 22. This basis consciousness, alaya vijnana, which is the source of everything external and internal. So everything external, the people, the places, whatever our senses experience as out there, and internal, the mind of the experiencer, and the peripheral events, the thoughts, the reactions, the emotions, the feelings, as we see and hear and smell and taste and touch. This basis consciousness, which is the source of everything, external and internal, is also the source, therefore, of everything which is to be eliminated. Eliminated. So like taking the layers of cloth from the lamp. Our Dharma path is one of elimination. And even when we look closely at the relative description of the Dharma path, accumulation and elimination, actually what we accumulate in terms of goodness, generosity, kindness, and this is very important in these teachings, is not really accumulation at all. We're being destructive. To accumulate is to amass, it feels like creating, but actually we are destroying. So I'd like to give one example, which is useful for what we're doing today, the Buddha families, and in general to understand our Dharma path. There is something natural which is good. Buddha mind, which is the truth of you, which is the truth of me and the truth of everything, is not neutral, it is good. It is good in every aspect. And this is why the primordial Buddha is called Samanta Bhadra. Bhadra means good, and Samanta means in every aspect. In every way, good. This is the truth of all existence. It's the truth of you. It's the truth of me. So let's give a simple example. You have a lot of food. Somebody next to you has no food. Is it not the most natural thing in the world to give them some of your food? Is that accumulating the parameter of generosity? Oh, you are being so kind, giving away your food. Or should it be, even without a single thought, the most natural thing in the world? No hesitation. You have, somebody else doesn't have. So we might say, oh, look, he was so generous. He gave that hungry man some food. I would say, he was so natural. But then when we're not natural and we are scared of giving, we are scared of losing, or we're too attached and we're not able to share, then we have the problem of attachment, the problem of fear for ourselves. So our Dharma is not so much developing generosity as getting rid of attachment and fear. When we see stories of holy people, not just Buddhist, many sages from all traditions, we see in their lives, they give away everything they have every day without second thought. They're not hoarding, they're not scared for tomorrow. They have complete liberation of mind and things. So please think about this. The process of becoming natural is one of destruction. Destruction of blockages, destruction of mind's poison, destruction of fear, destruction of clinging, destruction of ego. And when we get rid of those things, what is natural is beautiful beyond belief. It's perfect and good in every way. So our whole process, what Karmapa is referring to here, is that this basis consciousness, eighth consciousness, contains everything to be eliminated. And when there's nothing left, that's when we are perfect Buddha. Now, one thing I wanted to mention in respect to working on the various areas of ourselves is we often in Dharma come across the word ego. And it sounds like one thing, but of course the Buddha's teaching is precisely that there is no ego. So at least let's make a decent start and know that what we call ego in language and in our Dharma convention is a collective noun. If you are greedy and you can't give, so there are greedy tendencies And you might be able to give some things and not give other things. You might be able to give objects, but you can't give your love to somebody. Or you might be able to give your love to somebody, but you cling to objects. And so on and so on. So there will be various tendencies of greed and clinging in your mind. And then there will be various tendencies of anger in all of its shades. One big part of anger, very present these days in our society, is frustration. People are frustrated because life is not how they'd like it to be. It's not how they, in their ideal world, it ought to be, or what they deserve it to be, a sense of entitlement. And so there's an underlying frustration that's there. That's part of anger. And then some things upset us, whereas other things don't. The things that don't upset us might really upset somebody else. So we have many different aspects of anger, each one a different habit imprinted in the eighth consciousness. So we've got desire and greed and anger and passion and lust and jealousy and pride. And when we look more and more at how they work in some areas for some people and others, we see that what we call ego is just a collective noun for all of those. It's like we say plants in the garden. Collective noun. So the eighth consciousness holds everything we need to be getting rid of. And as we get rid of these things which are harmful for ourselves and for others, then bit by bit the light starts to shine. So when all of the things are gone from the eighth consciousness, because it's not a thing, eighth consciousness is not like a storehouse. We just use that as a word to help us understand. There is no house. There are just all the things stored. So when there's nothing left, there's no eighth consciousness. When all of your mind's relative habits are gone, then that eighth consciousness, verse 23, gives way to mirror-like primordial wisdom. Now we're going to have 5 primordial wisdoms. Mirror-like is one of them, but it's the main one. It's the main one. So all of the other 4 wisdoms are aspects of mirror-like wisdom. Now all of these wisdoms are a bit beyond description. And there's a problem, which is that Ken isn't quite Buddha. So even if I had these wisdoms, I couldn't say, well, it's go into deep absorption, mirror-like wisdom, and say, well, it's like this, my friends. I can't. I can only share the words I've inherited. But when you look in a mirror, so forget the you looking, what you actually see. What do you see in the mirror? You see a reflection. So that reflection in the mirror changes all the time, depending on who comes in front of it, what comes in front of it. But at the same time, even though you can't see it because of the reflection, the mirror's been there all the time. Now, you can't see a naked mirror. You'd need no light. As soon as there's light, the mirror's reflecting something. Mirrors are wonderful things to think about. They'll blow your mind. Please, if you want a bit of mind-blown awakening to some sort of cosmic, clicks, start really looking into a mirror and working out what's going on and what's there and what isn't. In the past, they said the reflection of the moon in water. They didn't have such good quality mirrors as we have these days. A really good mirror, going back a few thousand years, was polished silver. It doesn't reflect quite. The glass mirrors cost a fortune at the time of Buddha. They existed, if you go into the history of glass, but they were real rare wonders. But the point we're looking at here is the simultaneity of that reflective surface, which enables the reflection to happen. If there wasn't that mirror surface, that silvery surface, there will be no reflection. But then at the same time, it can reflect anything that comes in front of it. So the Buddha mind is this clarity of wisdom that's unchanging because it is simple clarity, total clarity, like a light that can shine on anything. And then whatever that clarity is directed towards, then that relative dharma phenomenon is known perfectly. This is the mirror-like wisdom. And then because of that, we get the sameness wisdom and the discerning wisdom and the activity accomplishing wisdom. They come out of this basic clarity, which is crystal clear and can know anything. It's the omniscience of the Buddha. And it says, and this, it was taught that this will be overcome, that the eighth consciousness will be overcome by the Vajra-like Samadhi. So we need to know how that happens. And we go to the Mahayana template of a 3 cosmic eon journey to enlightenment. Everything's neat, everything happens step by step. You've got a lot of time, and so that sketches out for us an ideal path, bit by bit, purer and purer, and wiser and wiser, and lighter and lighter. In Vajrayana, it's kind of hectic. We get in there full steam, all guns blazing, all engines full, and so it's not quite so neat. And this is why Vajrayana has a terrible danger that you can fall back. It's not like climbing up a cliff face, whereby you're secured, you've got a piton in the next place, you're all roped up, you can't go back, then you can put another piton in, get the next 20 centimeters up the cliff face. You've got dust in your hands, you're trusting your guide, and you're just gripping rocks and going up, and don't look down. And anyway, but if we go to the ideal bodhisattva journey template, then we go through, as we saw yesterday, the stages we go through as an incarnated worldly being, purifying ourselves and then integrating the shunyata, avoidance teachings. But then, at the end of learning about shunyata and practicing and meditating a lot and going through the 4 stages of that, we reach what is called the highest worldly state. Is as clear and as pure as your mind can be in a worldly incarnation. And you're worthy of being refound as a reincarnate Lama and so on, because you have so many qualities. At the end of that, there is a breakthrough, a definitive breakthrough once and for all, whereby all of your samsaric existence is finished and your default state of mind becomes Buddha mind. It's at that point, the first bodhisattva level, that the Vajra-like Samadhi is there, because it means your Samadhi, your absorption, your default state of mind is Buddha mind. Buddha mind is like a Vajra, it cannot be destroyed, and it can destroy all of your obstacles and blockages of consciousness. So that starts at first bodhisattva level. Great, isn't it? It's wonderful. Is there a but coming? Yes. So we get an example in the scriptures. Brilliant example, it really is. It says you're like a newborn baby. You've been 9 months and a bit in the womb, in the dark. And then, I was going to go pop, but I don't think it quite happens like pop, except in some rare circumstances. But there you are in the maternity unit, and you see light for the first time. After 9 months in the dark, you see light for the first time. And after that, light is light. It's so different from darkness. But, this is the but, although it's light, you've only seen the fluorescent lights of the maternity unit. You've not seen the light in the icebergs of the Antarctic. You've not seen the light inside gemstones. You've not seen so many other aspects of light, which varies from country to country, from season to season. You don't know all of the light. So although when we get to first bodhisattva level, there is this beautiful release from fear, release from samsara, presence from then on of what at this moment we take refuge in. They are there. They're no longer hoped for. They are present. So many things. And although there is the truth of Buddha mind, Dhammakaya, it is not in its fullness. And that fullness will emerge in the next 9 bodhisattva levels, bit by bit. And at the end of the 10th level, this Vajra-like samadhi comes to having no limits whatsoever. Actually, in the 10th level already, it does that. So that's called the Vajra Samadhi, Vajra mind. So then there is this mirror-like wisdom. Oh, goodness me, we have to go really quickly now. So then next we get the defiling mind. Now the 7th consciousness is totally defeated by it says the fearless samadhi. Again, this is a samadhi that is being developed from the first bodhisattva level onwards. So the same story as I just said. We stop being obliged to reincarnate. We're on the first bodhisattva level and we develop fearlessness. But that fearlessness, although it's stronger and stronger, takes on a very special quality at the 8th bodhisattva level. So there is the fearless samadhi. We don't have time to look at the levels here. In the course, we'll look at what happens through cultivating the insight you got in the first bodhisattva level. So at the 8th level, duality goes. We've come to that already in this course. The dualistic split is over. There's no more self and other, and there is an unimaginable level of fearlessness there that one remains in until total Buddhahood. So that fearlessness, where there is no more, even though it's known to be a delusion, split of self and other, brings what one already has from the first bodhisattva level, but in totality, so no more, you can't get any more, a knowledge of the sameness of all dharmas, the same value of all beings. So in the Karmapa's own commentary to this text, he says that we call this attainment of fearlessness the great forbearance. It happens from 8th bodhisattva level onwards, and it gives a very special quality to manifest your own pure lands in thousands and thousands of minds. On the 9th bodhisattva level, it becomes a profound wisdom that embraces all times, whatever happened, even in the most distant, remote past, in furthest places of the universe, on the 9th bodhisattva level. And on the 10th bodhisattva level, this fearless samadhi and the sameness wisdom it produces gives you the same quality of activity as a Buddha. So a 10th level bodhisattva and a Buddha have the same power to help other beings. So that's that verse. And it's the transformation of the defiling mind. So that's at the 7th consciousness, the one that splits everything into 2 is resolved. And then The other aspect of the seventh consciousness, which brings things on screen all the time, is called the sustainer, because it sustains mind locked in relative reality. It sustains our six consciousnesses. Sometimes we call it a word that's namtok in Tibetan is translated as thought. It doesn't just mean thoughts, it means mental activity, a mind which is active. And so overcoming that aspect of seventh consciousness, the one that keeps the whole show on the road and the one that activates our six main consciousnesses, when that is worked with through meditation and disappears, the illusion-like nature of everything is gone. So one understands other people's absorption still in their consciousnesses for the illusion it is, because one's mind is very, very purely in the truth. Now, that also happens with the great forbearance at the eighth bodhisattva level, and it gives rise to a discerning primordial wisdom. So we've had mirror-like primordial wisdom, and then the sameness of everything and everyone, sameness, primordial wisdom, and then now discerning primordial wisdom, which means it knows each dharma, each phenomenon, each karma stream clearly for what it is, separate from another one. Karmapa says these two wisdom, for verse 26, of identity and discernment are pure meditation, very, very pure. And there's no more mind which even for split seconds is either more in the nirvana, more in the samsara. This is the deepest peace. And this is the purest love and great compassion. And it manifests, emanates in other people's minds in many ways to help them. So it says the mandala of the great melody of Dharma manifests, along with the treasury of all samadhi and dharani. Samadhi and dharani are part of 80 bodhisattva qualities will develop in the bodhisattva levels. We don't quite have time now for all 80, so we just have these two, dharani and samadhi. So now we've had the eighth consciousness has become mirror-like wisdom. Seventh consciousness has given way to sameness wisdom and to discerning wisdom. And then the five sense consciousnesses and the part of mind consciousness, which is just raw awareness, they are overcome where? Now, actually, we start to overcome them much earlier in the path. And I think if you don't mind today, I'm going to go over the hour for the talk because I've run out of time almost. So now, while we're still humans, on the second of the five main phases of the path here, when we're cultivating shunyata, awareness, voidness, emptiness, already on there, the power of our five sense consciousnesses to hypnotize us, to take us into fixed reality, will be lightened up, made and purer. And as that happens, we start to become much more, in the immediate moment, aware of the purity of everyone and of everything. And then because of that, we start to acquire the wisdom of how to work to help each other. The activity accomplishing wisdom. Because what happens? What does this mean? That's a lot of words. What is shunyata? What is emptiness, voidness telling us? Ego is a trap, it's a delusion, it doesn't exist, but it's getting you into trouble. So as we shake free of ego, then whatever we experience through our senses becomes a resource for helping our fellow beings. It's no longer something we want to cling to and pull to ourselves, use in the selfish, ego-centered way. The delights of the eyes, ears, nose, of our body, instead of being something used selfishly, we've seen through that. We start to see how all of life is a resource, a richness, a wealth. It's like in the medicine Buddha teachings. Almost anything can be medicine if you know how to use it and when to use it and what to do with it. So in that sense, even before we reach the amazing liberation of first bodhisattva level, already as we're deepening our knowledge of shunyata, of voidness, then we can be awakening this activity accomplishing wisdom, number 5. Mirror-like wisdom, sameness wisdom, discerning wisdom. And then number 4, activity accomplishing wisdom. Now, what have we got left? What have we got rid of? And I'm sorry if it's been a bit rushed. We've got rid of the basis consciousness. We've got rid of the 7th consciousness in its 2 aspects. We've got rid of the 5 sense consciousnesses and 1 aspect of mental consciousness, which is raw mind awareness. What we've got left is the other aspect of mind consciousness, which is the peripheral activities, the thinking, and all of the mental events, samskaras, and so on. So that transforms as they are eliminated into Dhammadhatu wisdom. In fact, they go along with all of their traces at the end of our journey, the end of the 10th bodhisattva level, when the limitless expanse of Dhammadhatu is there. Just now we can use the word limitless. We can imagine limitless. Well, you can't really. It's a nice word and it conjures up what in your mind if you tell yourself limitless. It's just an idea. It's just an idea. The reality of a mind without limits, which means knowing everything, which never ends in time or space. That is the Dhammadhatu wisdom. Now, of course, there's a lot more to be said about these wisdoms, but what I wanted to go on to today, and I gave you in your handout, there's details on the 5 Buddha families. Now, when somehow, I'm not sure, maybe I'll send you an email. Years ago, I made a website with the 5 Buddha families, the 5 elements, the 5 directions, and you can click on it and see the associations with all sorts of things. And there's a little extract, which is, to my mind, so-so, I'm sorry to say it, from Trungpa Rinpoche, where he describes the Buddha families. It's quite, Trungpa Rinpoche is a fascinating writer. He has the gift of writing that catches your imagination, and he brings out unexpected ideas as examples. But in terms of the Buddha families, it's a bit limited. It's like astrology, when people use astrology to tell people about personalities, and they say, oh, you're a typical Virgo, you're a this and a that, without going much, much deeper into it. I think it's to help his students on the level they were at to get some grip on the Buddha families. But it's not like Karmapa's own commentary on the Buddha families, where we go much more deeply and accurately into them. But let's just have some kind of idea. Now, the Buddha families, and like I say, if you want to know more, go to that and you can click on all the directions and the colors and their associations with the elements and the seasons and the mind poisons and all that kind of thing. So first of all, the Buddha families are associated with the directions. But these, although they're called north, south, east, west, and center, are not the cardinal points of the compass. We are not here dealing with east where the sun rises and west where the sun sets. In Vajrayana, east is always what's in front of you. Always. And that means west is what's behind you. South is to your right, north is to your left. Now, this is to do with our internal structure. It's not stuff for a public talk, but you probably know inside we have energy channels and chakras, and these give rise to our mind's experience. And so these Buddha families are associated with these internal energy directions. Wherever you're facing is east. So in towards the east, then there we talk about the Vajra family. And I just say a few words, you'll find more on the website. And I don't know too much about it anyway, but just to give you some kind of a clue. Vajra is very much associated with intelligence and seeing things very, very clearly with discernment. Often it's associated with this mirror-like wisdom, because now we're talking about Buddhas. If we put it in terms that we can understand, it is that clarity of mind that sees things very clearly and doesn't get them mixed up, and that sees through things very clearly and sees through people very clearly, and won't accept any nonsense, and that masters knowledge very clearly. So it's got all the theory straight and lined up. It makes you, in human terms, very wise, but you might not be the nicest human to get along with because you're seeing the shortcomings and the faults, and your mind, even if you don't express it because you are a kind person, cuts through the crap that's going on in everybody else's existence, sees what they're up to, and so on and so on. It really knows what's going on. You will become an excellent analytical scientist and all those kind of things. So the problem with that aspect of intelligence is fixed ideas and the damage they can cause us and they can cause other people. Rigid religious beliefs, rigid philosophical beliefs, just the rigid idea of you and who the other person is, where you can project in a cruel and ignorant way. So that's the obstacle that's overcome. All of the power of our fixed ideas are very much to do with that aspect of sixth consciousness. And as they disappear through the path and through the bodhisattva levels, they'll give rise to this mirror-like wisdom. And the East is often associated with kind of a blue color, a water element. There are many reasons for this. So that's the East, Vajra family. And then the south to our right is the Ratna family. Ratna is Sanskrit for jewel. So their symbol is a jewel. And there we're looking at abundance and greed and clinging as the obstacle. So when we're in samsara, when we've got ego, then the wealth of life, the abundance of nature, the abundance of things, whatever we think of as richness, it could be abundance of knowledge, it could be abundance of stuff, it could be abundance of beauty. But there is abundance. It's compared to the autumn as a season, the time when all of the fruits are on the trees and everything's in its fullness. And the obstacle is that we have greed and hoarding and clinging because ego wants that for itself, wants it for itself. And then the liberation of that, when that ego goes, and one realizes this wealth of life and wants to use it for everybody, then in terms of wisdom, and the using it for everybody comes later, but here it's realizing the sameness. I'd like to give you a silly, simple example, so it's too easy to just rattle off words. I lived for a long time in Eskdalemuir in Scotland. It rains a lot. Now, if you're going to live there for years and you don't want to suffer, you have to learn to see the beauty of rain. And not like in that book, what is it, 100 Shades of Grey? But, you know, really posh photography is black and white, or shades of grey photography. Sometimes when you go to really top photographers' exhibitions, you think, gosh, they could have 16 million colours, and they've done the whole thing in black and white. But it's beautiful. So even though it rains and it's grey day after day, you can learn to see such beauty in that. And instead of walking along with your head down and saying to the person you pass by on the road, oh, terrible weather, oh, shocking, awful, man, you know, like this. You can walk along with your head up high like this, enjoy the raindrops on your face, enjoy the beauty of all those shades of grey, and the naked trees have their own beauty. Just like spring has its beauty and autumn has its beauty. We realize the abundance of every moment when you get deep into meditation. The sameness of pain and pleasure and so on. And so, bye Helen. And then, so that's briefly what we're getting rid of is greed and hoarding and selfish attachment, and replacing it with an understanding of the sameness. Behind us, so that's the Ratna family, jewels, richness. Behind us is the Padma family to the west. And so I see a note from Emma. When you go to different texts, you'll find that the colors associated with the directions, and sometimes even the Buddha's names associated with the directions, vary from tantra to tantra and from teacher to teacher. This is because they are all part of a oneness, and it's how they manifested at one time to a great teacher who gave us a teaching, or in a tantra.
I'm just wondering, therefore, where the poison of pride is. In
it's coming. It's coming.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
I'm trying very quickly to get through them.
Okay.
So I'm doing my best here from simplicity and memory. So to the south, the abundance it's usually represented with the golden color. It's the color of earth and of autumn. It's the richness of the earth and so on. Behind us, we have the lotus family, and this is usually red in color. And whereas one part of desire, which is greed and hoarding, is with the Ratna family, here with the lotus family behind us, it is passion. It is passion and seduction. And it is, so when ego takes that over, you want to be loved by everybody. You want to be a charming person. Magnetism is kind of everything. And there is a seductive use of things. Let's say you can put on a very fine perfume, which is a seductive perfume. You have a voice which is so charming. And you can say just the things that somebody wants to hear. And they're delighted and they think, gosh. And so there is the magnetism, the seduction, all of those things, but for a self-interest. And the way Trungpa Rinpoche describes it is that you're really interested in people because you're interested in yourself and you want them to be attracted to you and appreciating you and so on. But in another way, in the worst cases, you don't really give a damn about them and what goes on with them. So with the poison is the use, and it's very much connected with the arts and other things, the use of things to seduce. So when that goes away and ego's out of it, there is the same knowledge of the use of words, but instead of it being charming words to seduce you, it becomes use of the Dharma, use of words that make sense and will help somebody. So now, instead of being self-centered, it's the opposite. We're really concerned for others, and we can use sound, we can use music, we can use art, we can use examples from nature. So this is where the discerning wisdom, the knowledge of the power of each thing that discerns exactly what's right for this person at this time in their Dharma journey. The discerning wisdom is part of the Padma family. To our left, to the north in those terms, yes, so that's red color associated with the Padma family. So to the left, to the north, green color and associated with the wind element. Then we have the Karma family. Karma means activity. Padma means lotus. Karma means activity. And so here it's the activity accomplishing wisdom. And the poison that's overcome there is jealousy. Jealousy. And with jealousy, we are aware of things and their power, their qualities. We want them for ourselves. And we're very upset when other people have them and we don't. They get the boyfriend, girlfriend that we wanted. They get the job we wanted. They get the wealth, the resources we wanted, because we were thinking, oh, I know what I could do with that. Or I'd be so happy if I was with this person, and so on. Jealousy. So when the poison of jealousy is removed from the stream of consciousness, then that gives way to this activity accomplishing wisdom. See, they're all similar in a way, related, but there we know how to use resources, and in particular our resources, our skills. Instead of using them to win what we want in competition with others and to get ahead and to be the person who's ahead, we're using all of our skills and abilities to benefit, whatever it costs in some ways, when we're on the path. And once it becomes the activity accomplishing wisdom, there is no paying. So this leaves us with the center now. And the center of all of these things will usually have the main Buddha. This is usually, often, not always, is associated with white color. Now in the scriptures, white color, I'm looking at my clock, the white color, it says white, but very often in Tibetan that means clear, like a crystal. It doesn't mean white like paper. It means clear, like crystal or like pure water. So that's the center. And now this is ego and pride, because we're under the delusion of a self. This awareness that we are, we think of as a me, rather than just a universal, pure quality of wisdom. And so there is pride. There's also, what goes along with pride is a certain laziness. In fact, between this one, the center one, and the east, the Vajra family, there's a lot of similarity. We could put pride with the Vajra family as well, pride in knowledge, pride in being. But here in the center, the pride comes along with laziness. And when we're studying Maja in Tibetan, which is the word translated as pride, it means complacency, a sense of entitlement, which leads to a karmic laziness, where we feel we're pretty cool, I'm doing okay. We don't realize how temporary the blessings of our life are, and that we are guardians of something very wonderful. We feel I'll be like this forever. I'll always be Ken like this. And that's not at all guaranteed. You know, I might be a toad in my next life. Who knows? I don't hope so, but who never knows? So complacency and pride and laziness are the poisons of the center. Now these give rise, so this center is Buddha family, the last of our families. And laziness in an enlightened way gives rise to relaxation. And this is I love thinking about this one, the difference between being lazy and being relaxed. And it's the difference between being self-centered and being compassionate. I think that's all I can say. So because of the shortage of time, I did those from the top of my head. I'm not sure if they all correspond to what you've got in the pieces of paper I gave you. And they do vary from Tantra to Tantra. So in the Karmapa's own commentaries, he says, well, this is how it is, how I'm teaching it, and how it can be. But in this Tantra, then you get slightly different colors, slightly different associations, different Buddha names with the different directions. But it's to give us, from our point of view, the idea of all these qualities that form part of an inseparable whole. So we take them out and we analyze them so we understand the beauty, the multiple qualities of this one Buddha mind. So I think there I need to stop as far as the talk goes. And we've just peeked into this a little bit. That was the idea of this course, huge topic. And that we'd I'd titillate your imagination and set some ground so that as the years go by, you can really explore it in a greater depth. Let's dedicate the goodness to all of our fellow beings, and that we in particular may become guardians, owners, may become these Buddha wisdoms to help every single sentient being. Sonam liye tamche zikpani, topne nyepe dranam pamche, jegana che pala trupayi, sipe sole drova drvarashu. Chanchob semcho rinpoche, maje panam je joreche, Gyepa nyampa mekadam kongne kongdo pelvarnan sho. So